All right, yeah, so hi, I'm Danielle Cox, and I'm here talking about what I've been doing at Ardley with our being able to test things because writing test cases is, creating good test cases is a different skill set than developing. A lot of us don't have it. A lot of us don't like to do it. I don't think it's an accident that for most of us, we don't create tests until it's way too late anyway, just because we don't want to do it, we don't like to do it, whatever. And so what I've been working at doing is creating a, basically, creating a, it's gonna be a library ultimately that we can use so that with a little bit of setup up front by us, the developers, we can let other people create test cases, actually using JSON, and they could do this. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. So we're talking about being able to test without code. Oops, hold on, let's see. Let's get all set up here. Okay, so that's kind of my introduction. What we're going to cover today is I'm going to show you a little bit of the app, and then later I'm going to show you the actual test working, for what's going on here. We're going to talk briefly about the different types of testing. There have been a couple of great talks on that already, so I don't want to go too much into that. There are the types of actions that I can currently do with my JSON files, maybe some of the ones we want to do, challenges and limitations on that, and then I'm actually going to run a test for you, depending on time. We probably may not run the whole test, but I can show you kind of how it works. And then I'm going to talk about my next steps on this. So anyway, okay, so we have, there's several different types of testing. And the most basic one would be like a unit test. And that's like just going to be testing logic and going through a specific piece of code to make sure it does what you want it to do. Widget tests are kind of the next level up, and that's like taking a widget and testing it and see how that works for you. Like an example here might be in the form that we're filling out, there's a question where we'd ask if you're active in the military. And if you are, then we're going to ask you, like, do you have a discharge date? And you can put it in. So a widget test would be making sure that if you say yes, the right questions are on there, or no, the right questions are on there, things like that. One of the tests I like a lot that I don't think we use enough are golden tests. And that's where basically you've set up how it wants to be, you take a picture of it, and you know this is your good reference. And so when you run the golden test, it actually runs your code, and it creates another image and compares them. And if they're the same, it passes. If they're not the same, it doesn't pass, and you can go look and see why. They're a little bit fragile, but they're a good test to have. And then kind of what I'm working on here are integration tests. And that's also kind of where it's a little bit relevant for the whole Flutter and Firebase together, because you don't want to do any of those other tests actually using Firebase, because the Firebase team tests the Firebase stuff. You want to test your code. But an integration test, you want to make sure that you've got the right credentials. You want to make sure that it's doing what you want it to do, things like that. And so that's an integration test. And that's actually what I'm working on here. So let me show you just a little bit here with the app. So this is like a landing page. Let me actually restart it so you can see from the start here. So at this point in time, it's going off to the back end, and it's asking the back end to recalculate things, make sure the offers are still valid, things like that. Our app is used to help people refinance their house, things like that. And so it's basically it's this landing page which is to entice you into clicking through, and then it's a form to fill out. And we're communicating back and forth with the back end and stuff. So anyway, so this is like our basic app. We can we've got a couple of selections we can make here, and we can start up and go through some authentication with an email code, where you have to enter the email code and stuff like that. So I'm telling you this just so the next parts of it will make a little bit of sense. All right, so what can I do as part of this test? And I think this covers most of what we need to do. So the first thing you want to be able to do is you need to be able to find something on the page, okay? So almost anything you do, you have to find something first. And we're using keys primarily to do that. And the keys that we use are all value keys of strings. And that way I can take that string, put it somewhere else. And that's one reason, so I can actually reference it really easy, so we can use it to reference it in the JSON. But the other reason why it's really good to use a string with a key with a value key is because if I've got something that I want to have 3 or 4 different parts on that of that little section I want to be able to get to from that one key, I can mangle it. I can add something else to it. I can say, this is the yes/no question. This is the drop down. This is the item, whatever. So if you had a key, that's not easy to do. But if you have a string and you turn that into a key, that's easy to do. And I guess just one little tip. It's not on the slides anywhere. But one of the things I like doing is I extended the string class with a value key. And that way, if I want to allow it to be null, instead of having to check to see if it's null and put the key in, and otherwise, I can just say question mark dot. That's kind of a neat thing, but whatever. All right, so we use the keys primarily. you can use text. I just find the keys a little more specific with that. And it may not be on the screen. So like if we look back over here at this, if I'd wanted to find something that was down here, that wouldn't be on the screen until I scrolled. And so that's something we need to deal with. All right. The next thing that we need to, I'm sorry, challenge number one. The first thing you kind of have to do is, if you remember when I started the app up, how it had that progress indicator while it was doing things. Well, if I go look for the next button I want to tap or whatever, it's not on the screen. And so our first challenge is we need to be able to have a way to not fail in that case, and not just like say, well, wait 20 seconds because it might be 10 and who knows, So we need a way to deal with that, and I'll talk about that coming up. So the next thing we need to do is we need to be able to tap something. So once again, going back to my reference app here, I might want to tap this button, right? So that's real easy. Find the button, tap it. That's in our code here. The entering text is the same. It's the same exact idea. Once again, I guess I can show that real quick. If I were to tell it I've got a code here, this is where you would enter the text. So once again, it's tap on that. It's find that item and it's enter the text, which we've got from Flutter Tester. We've got the ability to do that, but what we're going to do is we're going to connect that with the JSON so that can actually happen. Okay, I added a wait one, and I did this. This is actually it started because of something I can't figure out. There was a couple of places when I would run through the app, there'd be a button, and I could tell that it found the button and it tapped the button, and it didn't take the action. And I don't have a good way to know that. So if I waited a little bit of time, it would actually work. And so I created a wait command to put it in there. It annoys me. I don't know why it was failing, but we'll get there at some point. So, so the reasons here also with the integration tests, you may need to actually have a wait. You may need to have a delay for 10, 15 seconds or whatever it is to let stuff happen at the other end or for things to happen that you want to schedule into this. So it's useful in the rule, not just for that. So when we first did this, when you're building things, you often make things more complicated than they need to be, right? And so this drop-down select here, our first pass at that actually had this as a command, to handle doing this and then tapping on something with it, right? But it turns out once we started really working on it, you don't need to. All I'm doing is I'm tapping here, and then I find whichever item I want and I tap that. So I don't need a special command for that. And then because we're doing an email code, and that's something we're talking about, that's another challenge coming up, but since we're doing an email code, we have to go kind of around the app to go get what the code should be entering. And there's a race condition there because it takes a while for it to get updated in the system. And so our initial pass at that just did our best at it and entered the code. And if the code wasn't right, then we tried it. We recognized that it wasn't right and we went and did it again. It was a very complicated little action for existing what we're doing. And so I came up with a way, when we get to the code, I'll show you how I'm doing that instead. But that was an action that we were able to get rid of now. So, okay, so this is where JSON can really help us out with this. And so each JSON file is basically a group of tests. So it contains the metadata about that. And it's got a bunch of individual tests, or one or more. I say a bunch, it could be a bunch, inside of that you can run when you're going through there. And so if we want to look at the JSON here, you can see that the JSON's really pretty simple. It's got the name of the group that we've got right there. And then it's got individual tests, and the tests have a name. This collection ID is a way that we can identify, it's our internal, that's the thing we're working with. And so what we decided to do is we decided to do it in such a way that the same test could actually go in any of the environments. And so we just give it a different collection, with what we're doing with that. And then we have our the test scenarios. I don't love that name. I didn't make it up, but we'll fix it at some point before it becomes a package. But it has in there. It's got an optional comment so that when I'm outputting data, I can say we're doing this step. We're doing this step. It's got the key that we're looking for. It's got the what we're doing. Like this was a tap. If I scroll down, we can see that this is a wait at this point. If we scroll down more, this is that special code. I will talk about how we're dealing with that. And here's an input, so it's got a text input value. So there's a little bit of variation, but not much. It's mostly just simple JSON. And part of my idea of this is that the QA person that's creating the test can actually basically have stuff they can copy and paste in there. If that turns out to be too difficult, I'll just create a simple Flutter app that'll write it out for them. It's not a big deal at that point to just say, here, this is I want to go to this element and I want to do this. That's basically what the JSON's saying. So, all right. So let's take a look at some of the code. Okay. I've got a group test class in the library, and that's really easy. So if we take a look at that on the group test, it actually does a group, which is from Flutter test. If you're familiar with Flutter test, a group is basically it's a group of tests that are together as you're running through, and it's useful. It's useful for when you want to isolate which tests you're running. I only want to run this group, for example. That's where that's useful, and it's simply a for loop. It just runs through all the tests, and it does what I'm calling the single test class. And on the single test class, it's responsible for initializing the test, tearing it down, and it has to run the actual steps that we're doing. Okay. And if we want to look at that code, come over here, and this is, it starts with the test widgets, which once again is from Flutter test, okay? And I'm adding this tear down, which is passed in from that's passed in from the actual part I'm testing, when I create that test. But in my case, since I'm doing this end around of the app to get certain things, to reset the app, things like that, I have to get my credentials. So I get the credentials here. I reset the application, which is that collection that we talked about, and then I just kind of dealing with that code. The way I solve the race condition is before I even start, I say, what do you have for the code right now? And if it, I've got that value, so later on you'll see that I can use that value to tell that it actually has been updated. So I don't have that. I don't have to guess. I get to know then. This restore Flutter error. I don't know if you've seen that before, but that's just some black magic that you do with tests, so that if you end up throwing an exception somewhere in your test, it actually pulls it in here, and so you get an actual proper failure. Versus otherwise, you end up with it just stops. So you don't have anything that said the test failed. And you may have stuff that already said the tests were succeeding. So it's just some black magic for that. And I can share this code with anybody at once if you have any questions afterward or if you want to see it. Like I said, I'm ultimately create a library, but I'm not quite there yet. And then we actually just run through, once again, another for loop with all of these, with all the things that we're doing in the test. So that's actually what that single test class does. So let's actually take a look now at how we accomplish these different things. Okay, so if you remember, we had a challenge with find. And what the challenge was that we don't know if it's on the screen yet or not. And so the way that I handled that is I made it a recursive function so that look, are you there? Great. No, we'll wait a little bit. Are you there? Great. We're out. And if I get to the end of my number of times I'll try it, then the test fails. Okay. And I'll show you the part with the key version, but the text is really basically the same, or the text version is basically the same. So here, let's go to this real quick. And so if we take a look here, what we'll see is you'll see that you pass in the tester from that. You've got the element that we're testing, which is what knows the key we're looking for and things like that. And then we've got the attempts remaining, and I've just got some constants in there. And I've actually got a little bit of a back off that's like, it tries again quickly the first couple of times, and it goes a little bit longer. And it's about 20 seconds. When it doesn't find it, it'll fail. That's probably overkill. I should probably just do a second or something every time, but that's how I've got it for now, at least. And so the logic's really pretty straightforward. If I'm out of attempts, fail the test. Okay. Otherwise, if I need to wait before we try it again, let's wait. And then there's always a pump and settle. I mean, this is testing, so we always do that. And then I do the find by key, and it may not be on there. And I'm going to be honest on this. When I looked at this, I realized I'd forgotten that we hadn't dealt with this yet. We've got two different ways of making sure it's on the screen. I'm not sure. I don't think they're both necessary. And so I'm going to have to go and look and see which one I keep, if I need to have the scroll or if just ensure visible is going to work. I honestly don't know right now. And again, because we might have moved the screen, we pump and settle again. And then because it's in a try catch and it fails if it can't find it, we're good. So we can just return it. Otherwise, it's simple recursion. We just send it with attempts remaining -1, and, try it again, and we do that. So that's the complicated one. Okay, if we look here at tap is going to be very simple. Okay, if we come down here to tap is find the element, tap the element. And I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead. The next slide is for entering text. It's find the element, enter the text in the element. It's that simple for that. So that's where the find was really the hard part of doing that. Now, so that was the input text. And I already talked a little bit about it here, but we've got another challenge. And this challenge is the fact that that email code gets generated when I tap the button saying send an email code. Okay, that's not something I can put in a test. So that's something that I need to somehow determine what the value I need to enter is. And that's actually something that's the reason why it's not just that's the reason why I can't make it a package yet, because it's still in my library of how I'm doing it. But I'll show you how I actually am addressing that. So that is, it's very similar to the same kind of backoff. And so it's the same exact style of code. I wrote both, so it's a copy paste with some changes. But basically, if I'm out of attempts, fail the test. And then I need to do this pump with a duration to make it wait, to make the app wait for that long. And then I go and I grab the code, from the back end, and I check to see if it's changed. If it's changed, life is good. If it hasn't changed, then I call it again, and we do that until we either have a new code or it's backed out. So that overall is pretty straightforward once we got there. But like I said, we started a lot more complicated than that. So the wait is the easiest of all. The wait is just it's basically a no-op, because my JSON has a duration in it. And so after every step, I'm waiting typically a very small amount of time. That's the default. But if you had a bigger time, then it's going to do that. But I like having this as a command better than attaching to the one before, because what if you reorder the things you do things in? That would mess that up. Also, it's a little bit weird to say, because of this element, I need to wait, but that's the element that needs to do it. So that's why I like having this as an operation in there. And like I said, I think there's times where legitimately you want to let time for something to happen on the outside, with things that are happening. Or maybe that's part of your test. You want to make sure that if enough time's gone on, then things still work, so that's what that's for. All right, so now I've got ideas for additional things I want to add to this, okay? I'd like to be able to take a snapshot and save off a picture of the screen at this point in time, because I think that's that's very powerful for proving your test worked, I'd like to actually put one in to just do a golden comparison, so we can actually do the golden test with this and run through. So in that case, for example, I would mock up my back end, and I would run through it with just for the front end part, but I could still step through the whole entire app and have a picture of every page of the app that's checked, and that way I know if something has changed. Maybe a simple expect. Those get to be a little bit hard because for this to work, you have to be able to serialize whatever you're intending to happen. It's quite likely I want to be able to scroll the screen. Just to scroll it. So that's another action I would do. And I think it may actually be useful to have the ability to say, I don't find this. This doesn't exist. So those are the ideas I've got that are kind of my next steps toward improving this. And I do want to make this a library that I put out there, and hopefully people would find it interesting. I do have, though, kind of another challenge here. And I guess if I want to describe things here, our app is web-based, but I do my development and my testing pretty much always in Mac OS, partially because of stateful hot reload, but partially is especially if you're having to authenticate, it's a lot easier just to just be able to stay that in there. But also in the case of for the integration testing, it's easier to drive it that way than it is through Chrome driver. It also, because I want to be able to have my tester be able to run their own tests, custom tests and stuff like that, I don't want that to necessarily be part of the entire project. I want them to be able to have their own things to run. And in the browser, you are automatically sandboxed. So you can't get to files out of that without giving permission and things like that. And so Mac OS, I can turn on for development. I can turn on the ability that Sandbox is turned off, and that way I can write files that can be saved. I can read files that are not part of the basically distribution in this case. So that's why I'm using that, but it doesn't have a snapshot, whereas Chrome does. So there's reasons to maybe try to keep playing with it. I'm not totally there, but those are so the build environment and kind of the security getting around those things are still challenges I'm working on. Okay, let's actually real quickly, let's go ahead and, let's see, I think I can go to right here. And I'm gonna kick off with the test. So the first thing it does is build. Since the last update I did, I'm getting a lot more errors. That's always fun. All the errors you get when you're building for iOS or Mac or even Android. And let's see, I think it went to, it went to this screen here. And so you see here now it's doing its, going in, it's doing this long, and this is longer than normal because of it being in our test environment. But it comes in here, it's filling out the stuff, going through there. Here's where it's waiting to get that code. So this one's going to wait a little bit longer because it's got to do it. But when it gets the code, it will enter it. Yep, and then it'll move on from there, and it just feels like we've got some authentication, to make sure that you are who we think you are, not just by email. And then, it just goes through and it fills out the form. And so this is how the test works. And so I think I'm gonna go ahead and stop it though, because I'm a little bit low on time. I guess it's worth seeing here that I've got the, I'm outputting stuff there, and I can, for right now I've just got test : in there. I can grep on that so that I can actually just see the elements of this, that what's going on, what's working, what's not working. Okay, so back to our presentation. The next steps. I want to make a library and publish it. I've mentioned that, but to do that, I've got to solve some issues. I want to add the support for the other testing types, not just integration testing. Because I'm passing in the app to the test library, I can just pass in, somebody builds a widget, for example, and do a widget test in this. But then I may not have, that would not fully replace widget testing with Flutter test, because you may be testing a lot of other things with that, not just tapping and pressing and making it do things. I'd like to add the ability to for example, in this case, when I submit the application at the end, I'd like to go with my end around, the back end kind of way, pull back the application and compare and see, did the value that's been updated there, is it what I expected it to have been, things like that. And I need to be able to make it run from CI/CD, which would, this was all run with Flutter driver, which is how you get to see it. It runs with Flutter test also, so it would need to be run with Flutter test. And I'm still struggling a little bit with the screen dimensions, things like that, with that. So, and let's see. And so the challenge number 4 here is how I get the teardowns and the all customized coming in, so it works as a library. Also, how I get the test specific code out. So in this case, the going to get the code, things like that. I need to pull that out of the library, and so that's one of my next steps to do. And I don't know. So far, I think the best idea I've got is probably to just take a page out of the plugin playbook and have a channel that just basically you can say, here, do this, and it passes back, and then the test doesn't even have to care what the what type it is or whatever. So that's pretty much that. And so this is how we're trying to do testing. It's how I'm trying to make it to where we can let our QA people create the test cases for our Flutter apps, and we do the code. That's my Twitter handle. I'm so close to 2,000 followers, so anybody wants to help me out, that'd be great. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got a YouTube channel, but it's not been real active, so that's why I didn't put it there. But hopefully you'll start seeing that come up. And I want to bring up the fact that like Simon said, I'm one of the co-organizers of the Flutteristas. Got a couple of great Flutteristas here in the front row supporting me. We've got a conference coming up. At least as of right now, it's on the 11th of November, and it's virtual. So we would love for you all to attend and see the work that all of our wonderful ladies are doing. So thank you.